Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The extent of the injury for Daniel Dubois that he sustained on November 28th in a loss to Joyce has been revealed. So we'll cover that in this video, but also Joyce, who beat Dubois on that date, he looks like he could potentially be facing veteran Marco Huck next. But we'll start with the Dubois stuff, because obviously a lot of back and forth between fans in the past week or so since that loss. Some people didn't like that Daniel Dubois pulled out of that fight, but the extent of the injury, I think some people will now maybe change their mind just a little bit to say, well, actually, it was probably the smart move. Although I think some people won't believe it was the right move, given some people wanted him to clearly go out on a shield and potentially end up losing an eye or something like that. But Daniel Dubois, according to Frank Warren, sustained 2 fractures to the orbital bone in question that got puffed up early in the fight by a jab from Joyce and progressively got worse in the fight until the 10th round, where Daniel Dubois, his eye was closed up, couldn't see, took a knee, and then ultimately was counted out. So that has been revealed by Frank Warren as 2 fractures in that one orbital bone, as well as some hemorrhaging in that area. And he also, and see here on screen, so Frank Warren talking to IFL TV, so this is a quote that IFL Umar has put up on his Twitter, and this is from the specialist who saw Daniel Dubois earlier in the week. So the quote, "I have explained to Mr. Dubois that it was fortunate that the fight was stopped. The trauma could have caused more orbital tissues and the extraocular muscles that move the eyeball to be entrapped into the fracture fragments and cause potentially career-ending double vision." So that was from a specialist saying it could have been much, much worse had it continued. And this whole issue of, kind of the Warriors Code and Daniel Dubois not going out on a shield has been a big talking point since the fight. And I've just discussed some of this on my Patreon. So patreon.com/boxing squared if you want to check it out from as little as $1 a month. But in terms of this new information, I think certainly it was the smart move for Dubois, who couldn't see. I mean, some people have been making the argument that he should have laboured on, that he should have continued to fight with the one eye, and even some boxers like David Haye have said they would want to have gone out on their shield. In light of this, clearly it could have been a career-ending injury, and maybe even an eye-ending injury had he continued and got pummeled in the face for 2 or 3 more rounds. It was, midway through or partway through the 10th round, so 2.5 rounds, he would have had to survive and try to protect that eye, all the while not being able to see out of one eye and potentially getting pieced up by Joyce. So I know some people are making a big deal about him having quit, him having actually said, I can't see, so I can't continue. Make of that what you will, and if your position is different to mine, well, that's fine. I think that he made the right call for his eye, one, his health, but also his career potentially. And in light of the severity of the injury, which is worse than we were initially led to believe, 2 fractures and some damage, I mean, you can certainly make an argument Daniel Dubois could be damaged goods now. Will he be able to recover from this? Will there be any sort of hangover effects, at least in terms of his boxing, the way that he fights? I mean, bearing in mind that it was a jab that broke Daniel Dubois' face here. A jab. It wasn't a massive right hand that thudded in and, backed him up. It was a jab early in the fight that started to do the damage and clearly just continued to chip away at his face. So you could make an argument that, he could be damaged goods here. Is he going to be able to recover from this? And even now, even though it talks about there could have been potentially career-ending double vision, etc., what's to say that there isn't some hangover or lasting effect? But I guess it's safe to say that Daniel Dubois could be out for some considerable time. And I'm not sure what they do to sort of patch up his face. Do they put in something like Kell Brook, a metal plate into his face or something like that? I mean, you would have to wonder, is the other one also at risk of getting cracked open a la Kell Brooks as well? I don't know. But yeah, in terms of all this, certainly it's a much worse injury than I think we were all led to believe initially. And I know Frank Warren will be putting this out to justify why Daniel Dubois stopped, and some people won't like that. ultimately it is what it is. He did it for his own reasons, and I guess we have to move on. Some people won't like it, and some people haven't liked it, but ultimately we will see where we go from here with Daniel Dubois. Is he damaged goods? Well, only time will tell. We'll have to see how he does bounce back from this. And in terms of Joyce, after the fight, a lot of us asking, well, what next? And as an option, Marco Huck could be one for him, because there had been a number of names thrown out, potentially, some within the Top Rank stable, the name of Carlos Takam, and that name was only really coming up because could Joyce get the sort of fight that he'd want to be in next? Either a title fight or a final eliminator or against a top 10 contender, because that's the sort of fighters he wants to be in with. Carlos Takam is not that anymore. He's a top 30-ish, somewhere around there sort of guy right now on the downswing of his career. But there is a working relationship between Top Rank and also Queensbury, Frank Warren promoting Joyce. But a fight with Marco Huck, potentially that could be resurrected. The pair were originally meant to have fought at the start of this year in January. Marco Huck won the purse bid. Joyce was going to have to go to Germany, but ultimately the fight fell through. Marco Huck fractured his hand. See here on screen, this was at the time. But there were also rumours at the time that tickets were hardly shifting for that. So the timing, some saw it as very, coincidental. But if this fight is to happen, and according to the EBU, there is now private negotiations being held right now. So Marco Huck had a deal in place to fight the winner of Joyce and Daniel Dubois. And for Joyce, that's a pretty good fallback option if something big doesn't materialize. At least he can fight in a somewhat meaningful fight against Marco Huck, get some rounds, and he will win that one as well. I picked Joyce to win that the first time. I think the height, the reach, the engine, it's just too much for Marco Huck at this point in his career. Marco Huck is not the guy that he once was, but he can still go some rounds, make it a bit tricky and awkward for Joyce. And I think ultimately as a fallback option, it's not terrible by any stretch. So what do you make of the severity of the injury to Daniel Dubois and Joyce and Marco Huck potentially being a fight that we will see in 2021? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.